BWL Draft. We're moving into the 16, 18U A and B League Draft. So this year, we're doing it a little bit differently. We're going to draft all 26 rounds, and then the coaches will kind of decide who their A and B League rosters are. Instead of drafting A and B League separately, we're going to go ahead and draft all 26 rounds here, and then the coaches will decide their roster. There was a big 7-pick each, so 14-pick total trade in this draft, so the order is a little bit wacky. The Pinstripes will have both the first 2 picks. Then the Throwbacks have 3 picks. I'll keep you updated throughout the entire draft here. But Bernie, with the Pinstripes having the first 2 overall picks, the Throwbacks, though, they have 5 of the first 8, 7 of the first 12. Who do you kind of favor in this trade?
I would probably go Throwback because there's, a lot of good players in this draft, I think. After the first 2, Kenny's going to have his first pick of basically anybody he wants here, the first 2 guys. But after that, a lot of top pitchers are going to be left. A lot of top hitters still going to be left. I think those next picks are going to be big.
If you were drafting with the Pinstripes, are there 2 obvious picks for you that you would take with these first 2 picks?
There's definitely one. And after that, I think you can kind of go a bunch of different directions.
Okay. So the Pinstripes wanted to make sure they had these first 2 picks. So KJ is going to go ahead and go with the first overall pick of the 16-18U A League, or the A and B League draft. The Pinstripes are going to go with Ben Combs coming off the board here. And Bernie, I assume that's who you're talking about as kind of the obvious one. This second pick here is interesting to me, Bernie, because I think there's several different routes you can go, and KJ really wanted to make sure he had the first 2 picks in this draft. So I think KJ had a plan going in of who he wanted. But to me, it's not so clear. I think you go the offensive route, go Wyatt Poore. You could go the big bat and big arm, go Logan Eckert. Or you can go with kind of the two-way guy and go Andrew Willeret. Any prediction here, Bernie? What do you think?
I'm going to predict. I guess I'd predict Wyatt Poore. He seems like a Kennedy-type vibe guy. But I don't know. It could be any of the 3.
Okay, so KJ went with Ben Combs with the first overall pick. With the second overall pick, both picks in the first round, he's going to go with Logan Eckert. So he gets the best bat in the draft and arguably the best arm in the draft. So KJ, one of the first 2 picks, got the best bat, got the best arm. I mean, Bernie, it's hard to hate that start. It just depends on what is he able to get here in the later rounds of the draft, who kind of fell at the rest of his roster. But you can't argue with the start here. I think the question is going to be, who's the second best hitter on this team? With the first pick of the second round, the Throwbacks are going to take Wyatt Poore. And then I think if I had to bet my money here, I think Andrew Willeret's coming in as one of the next 2 picks. Those were kind of the obvious top 4 for me. I thought the top 4 picks, maybe not in order, but I thought the top 4 picks were pretty simple, and it is going to be Andrew Willeret coming off the board here. So after that, Bernie, I'm going to be honest with you. After the top 4 picks, I think this draft will go a lot of different ways. I mean, there's so much talent in kind of the middle of this draft. I mean, basically from the 5th overall pick to like the 19th overall pick, I think there's a lot of different players you could take here. I have no idea who's going to be on this card coming up here, Bernie. Do you have any idea? Do you have any guesses?
I mean, I'll shoot a guess of Landon Nickerson, but I don't have a list of players in front of me. I might be forgetting somebody.
Okay, the 5th overall pick here for the Throwbacks. This is their big advantage. They get 3 of the first 5 picks. It's going to be Bruce Portell. So Bruce Portell comes off the board, and you get basically 2 of the best catchers in the draft. The 2 best catchers, arguably. You get a big 2-way player in Willeret, the big 2-way player in Bruce Portell. And now the Pinstripes, they've got 1 pick here, but then it's back to 2 more for the Throwbacks. I think, KJ obviously is going to be really top-loaded with Ben Combs and Logan Eckert. But I'm curious here to see how he's kind of going to reload this team as we move through the draft here. The Pinstripes on the board here with their 3rd pick, the 3rd round. It is going to be Ty Zazueta who comes off the board. So catching problem very quickly solved here. I think you can make an argument he is the best defensive catcher in the draft. Really good catching in this draft as a whole. Ty, big-time hitter, and Ty can pitch a little bit as well. So a great pick there. This draft is just flying. Bernie, the Throwbacks back on the board here for 2 picks. The first pick of the 4th round is going to be Noah Hendricks. So Rob, really a nice spread here. He's got offensive kind of focus with Wyatt Poore. He's got 2 two-way guys in Willeret and Portell, and then you got a big-time pitcher in Noah Hendricks. The Throwbacks back on the board here again. And Bernie, after this pick, I want to get your thoughts on the first 5 picks for the Throwbacks here. So we've got Wyatt Poore, Andrew Willeret, Bruce Portell, Noah Hendricks, and to add to it, Bernie, it's going to be Gunnar Wilson coming off the board here. And I got to be honest, Bernie, a little surprised with this one. I thought Gunnar would go a little bit later. What do you think about this first 5 picks here? Poore, Willeret, Portell, Hendricks, and Wilson.
Yeah, I think those top 3, obviously I think those are the right 3 to pick for Rob there. After that, I'm not saying like no Hendricks is one time. Like, he's a pitcher. I know he's good at it, but round 4 is pretty high in a draft that's just loaded. And I'm a little surprised here with Gunnar as well, but we'll see here. No one knows him better than Rob.
Yeah, I do play in a little blocker there with the catcher, but KJ does have Ty already, and we'll see. There's lots of catchers in this draft. KJ's not going to take a catcher with this pick. With the first pick of the 5th round, it's going to be Landon Nickerson, a big-time bat coming off the board. The Pinstripes back on the board here for the 5th round again. The 10th overall pick is going to be Jaden Coleman. So KJ going a little bit specialized here. Look at his draft so far. You got really offensive-minded Landon Nickerson. You got pitching-minded Jaden Coleman. You got Ty Zezueta, I would say is a little bit more offensive. I know he can pitch. Pitching-minded Logan, and then offensive-minded Ben Combs. But I said, how's he going to salvage this lineup? Bernie, a top 3 of Ben Combs, Ty Zezueta, and Landon Nickerson doesn't seem too bad. What do you think about this start here for the Pinstripes?
Yeah, I think Jaden Coleman's not a great pick for him. I think he's be one of the better pitchers in this draft. I think this guy can hit as bad as came a long way in the past year or so. But you're drafting 26 rounds of guys here. You can kind of get specialized guys and put your rosters together because you have that many players you can kind of decide from. So I like what KJ's doing here.
Yeah, and this has been a theme. I think defensively this team looks very strong again. You look at Rob's roster, Poor, Willeret, Portell, Hendricks, and Wilson. None of those guys are really infielders, Bernie. So I do think defense, there's a lot of fielders late in this draft, but I think when you look at KJ's defense, Ben Combs at 3rd, Jaden Coleman at short, Landon Nickerson at 1st, Ty Zezueta at catcher, looking at a really good defense already. So I do think the Pinstripes starting really strong defensively. The first pick of the 6th round, Rob is not going to address the defensive problem, but he is going to take a big bat with Ivan Saxon coming off the board. Bernie, what's the best defense?
What's the best defense?
A great offense. Just score more runs. If you're going to allow a bunch of runs, you might as well just score more. So Rob going with the offensive approach here. And again, there are some gloves late in this draft that you can go ahead and take. But it is going to be another guy. This guy does play the infield, so we're getting on the right track here. But I don't know if he's necessarily known as a gold glover. It's going to be Sam Dollins coming off the board here. And again, I told you, I think this draft will go any which way from about 5 to about 19. I had all these guys going in this range here. Definitely not the order I had them going, but this throwbacks team looking very strong offensively, looking very strong on the pitching side. I think the only thing you can question right now is the defense for them. Whereas the Pinstripes, I think, got a strong top half of the rotation, got a strong top half of the lineup. I think the question for the throwbacks is going to be kind of the bottom half of the lineup, the bottom half of the rotation. We'll see how KJ kind of addresses that. Bernie, from what you know about this draft, obviously all of 16U, all of 18U, and then obviously a couple guys will get drafted from 15U. Do you think you're going to have more success finding fielders late in the draft or finding, pitchers or hitters?
Yeah, I'd definitely go with fielders. There's a lot of guys who I think, especially at the 16U age group, a lot of guys who play for Latrania and Driscoll that are good defenders here. I've said for a long time, 16U has, at least 4 good shortstops at the age of about 5 or 6.
Yeah, 100%. With the first pick of the 7th round, it's going to be Eric Latrania, Bernie, one of the most dominant players in BWL history last year. This guy played on 3 different leagues and just absolutely crushed the ball. Bernie, this guy hit, let's see, I have his stats here. This guy hit .538 in the BWL last season, 6 homers. This guy was absolutely dominant. KJ maybe looking for a little bit of repeat magic here with Eric Latrania. And with his second pick here in the 7th round, it's going to be Braden King. So again, KJ sticking with that approach. You get a big-time hitter and a big-time pitcher, pair them together. Eric Latrania can pitch a little bit as well. But KJ, I think KJ's kind of putting this draft together, Bernie. I think he's starting to figure it out. When you look at the top half of this lineup where Combs, Zezueta, Nickerson, Latrania, look at the top half of this pitching staff with King, Coleman, and Eckert. Does kind of feel like it's a pretty good team coming along. It's just going to be how do you fill out the lineup, how do you fill out the rotation. What do you think about the Pinstripe start here?
Yeah, like I just said here, with the roster this big, with this many rounds of players here, you can put together a roster of good pitchers and good hitters to where this strategy I think is really going to work for the Pinstripes team.
Okay, with the first pick of the 8th round, it's going to be Adam Shockley, who comes off the board here. Now, Adam, one of those guys who falls a little bit in this draft because doesn't pitch, doesn't really play defense. He's typically an outfielder, and is a left-handed bat. So I think a lot of things playing against him here. But when Adam Shockley is on, I think a very, very solid player. With the second pick of the 8th round, the throwbacks are on their way here to the table. So, Bernie, give me your thoughts here on Adam Shockley and Lucas Coulson, who go back-to-back here, Bernie. No, Bernie, I know Lucas Coulson, a guy you like a lot. I think a guy who's going to be mostly drafted for his pitching. What do you think about this kind of combo here, Shockley and Coulson?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two guys who are safer, on the safer side here. Shockley's always been using a good at-bat here. And Coulson, another guy who I think takes pretty good at-bats, another lefty up there that has gotten better with the bat, but I think he's shown some flashes with his arm.
As we start the 9th round here, the Pinstripes have both picks in the 9th round, the 17th and 18th overall pick. See how the Pinstripes add to their kind of hitting or pitching depth here. And it's going to be a guy who can maybe do a little bit of both. It's going to be Andrew Engelken who comes off the board here. I think Engelken definitely more known for his bat. And Bernie, I think really high ceiling with the bat, but also can pitch, can play a little defense. I think a nice all-around pick there. What do you think about the Engelken pick?
Yeah, those 18U guys I think gets maybe a little forgetting about playing for 18U burn here. But, I mean, again, I have to go pretty far up the list to find a guy that I'm 100% confident is a better hitter than Andrew Engelken. Yeah,
I mean, one of the oldest players in the draft, and KJ going to go right back to the well on that 18U, 17U burn team and take Niall Guzman. This is a guy who I think if you get 10 weeks out of, I think this is a great pick at the 18th overall pick. I think availability is going to be a little bit of a question, but when this guy is on, I think this is going to be a home run pick, Bernie. A big-time pitcher, potentially, good defender, and even with the bat, I think can be very, very good as well. Engelken and Guzman, Bernie, I think at this point in the draft, what do you think about that kind of combo?
Yeah, Niall could be a really good player here. I think we'll kind of see in the winter how available he is. I know he's told JT multiple times over the course of the fall that his arm was hurting. So we'll kind of see here what the fall brings here. But if Niall's on, if Niall's available to do everything he can do, he'll be a good player.
Yeah, if you get 10 weeks out of Niall Guzman, I think that is a home run value there for him. Moving on to the 10th round, the throwbacks will have both picks here in the 10th round. And they're going to start to address some of their defensive needs, Bernie, with Andrew Driscoll, arguably the best defender in this draft. I think that kind of solves the shortstop problem. Again, you kind of look up this draft. Sam Dollins can play a solid third base as well. And I think, like you said, Bernie, there's some really good gloves late in this draft that you can kind of forget about defense early on in the draft and just fill your bench with really good gloves. But Andrew Driscoll, he hit well in the BWL last season. If I can pull it up here, Andrew Driscoll hit .417 in the BWL. He had 5 home runs. So this is a guy who I think the BWL really plays his strengths. He's a line drive hitter. So I think Andrew Driscoll, I think you're drafting him to play good defense. But I think he could very easily be more than that, Bernie. As soon as we get the throwbacks next pick, I want to get your thoughts on both picks here as we move on to the 20th pick in the draft. Remember, we're drafting all 52 picks in this video here. And again, whether you get drafted 20th or you get drafted 30th doesn't necessarily mean you'll be A-League or B-League. The coaches will decide their rosters, and they'll fluctuate from week to week. You cannot play both leagues in the same week, but you can flip-flop every week. You move as the coaches see fit. I know last year a lot of times we would have a guy, I would have a guy pitch for B-League, and then next week when he was ineligible to pitch, he would hit for my A-League team, and I think very similar things could happen this year. Okay, Bernie, Andrew Driscoll is the 19th overall pick. I want you to give me your thoughts on Andrew Driscoll and a guy, Bernie, who, again, is a BWL merchant, Alex Ruppel, coming off the board here. This is a guy who I know KJ wanted a lot. KJ said there's very few guys who give him, the shivers like Alex Ruppel does when he's up there, man. He's a scary guy to play in BWL. A guy who pitches specifically against Bears really, really well because he throws 80% off speed. He's a guy who really does good hitting in the BWL. What do you think about these two picks here, Ruppel and Driscoll?
Yeah, I think that before these two picks, I wasn't a massive fan of how the throwbacks draft was kind of going here. But these two picks kind of bring it back for me. Andrew Driscoll is a very good player, especially in BWL. Can be a leader of that team. And then Ruppel, this guy always seems to perform BWL. He's a good pitcher. He can hit. He can catch. He can kind of do it all for him. I agree that he is a scary person to face.
I think Ruppel's a perfect kind of player who can be the best player in your B-League team or one of the bench players on your A-League team. I think he makes a lot of sense with that pick. Moving on to the 21st pick here. The Pinstripes are going to take Jude Blattner. So, Bernie, we mentioned there's a lot of catchers at this draft, but quality catching does kind of run out pretty quick. So KJ making sure he's got a catcher for both leagues, especially. Jude Blattner, I think, could very easily be an A-League player, but if he does need to play B-League, he can do that as well. Bernie, I want to get your thoughts here on Jude Blattner and also the 22nd overall pick. Bernie, our first 15U player coming off the board here is going to be Evan Lancaster. So, Bernie, Evan Lancaster coming off the board, Jude Blattner coming off the board. What do you think about these two picks?
Yeah, I think that we're addressing the back half of the lineup right now. Evan's going to play with 18 guys. He's going to be a good hitter still. I think Jude, I know he's a catcher, but I still think he's an offensive first catcher. So these guys are both going to fill out the lineup really nicely.
Yeah, I really like the value for both these picks. I think Evan has an enormously high ceiling. Defensively, I love this Pinstripes team, man. I think both the A and B League Pinstripes are going to be really slick defensively, and that's been a theme through all the drafts. I mean, this Pinstripes organization, I didn't necessarily notice this in the past, but definitely this year, it feels like the Pinstripes are very good defensively this season. It seems like the throwbacks have leaned toward more pitching this year. The Pinstripes definitely lead toward hitting, but I think defensively, the Pinstripes have had the edge in all three drafts. The 23rd overall pick here for the throwbacks is going to be Seth Mullen. So again, Bernie, like you mentioned, a lot of really good gloves late in this draft. You get Seth Mullen, you get Andrew Driscoll, and this defense all of a sudden is looking solid, right? You got Seth Mullen, Andrew Driscoll for your middle infielders. Sam Dollins can play third base for you, and Bernie, all of a sudden this defense looks good as ever. So maybe that was a strategy to wait on defense to a little bit later in the draft. I think Seth could be the top player on your B League team, or he could be the second baseman or shortstop for your A League team. I think that ended up working really nicely there for the throwbacks. And their second pick here in the 12th round, the 24th overall pick, the throwbacks are going to go with Lucas Wilburn. So we have our second 15U player coming off the board here. And Bernie, what do you think about these two picks? You get kind of a defensive specialist in Seth Mullen, but don't doubt his bat. He's definitely not a bad hitter. And then you get Lucas Wilburn, who, I think one of the most solid 15U hitters, arguably the best 15U hitter, playing here in the older guys. I think he's going to be able to hang. What do you think about these two picks?
Yeah, I think throwbacks continue to kind of bring the draft back for me here. Seth Mullen, I think, was one of the better hitters on Driscoll all season. Got a chance to play for it a little bit, but obviously a great defender. Now you look around the infield, Driscoll, Mullen, Wilburn, still one of the best defenders, even at 18U at first base. Like you said, Sam Dollins, a couple of different guys play third for him. This team I think started to come together a little bit, and it's in a lot better spot than it was 4 picks ago.
The Pinstripes back on the board here. They have both picks here in the 13th round. It's going to be Dane Pastrana coming off the board. Another one of those guys, Barney, that historically has been a very good player in BWL. Had some big moments in both of the last 2 seasons. A guy who's been working on his pitching as well. I can see this guy being a two-way threat, certainly in the B League, or being a very nice bench bat for the A League team. The Pinstripes are back on the board here, the 26th overall pick. It is going to be Carter Abernathy, one of those guys who definitely more of a pitcher than anything else, but his bat, I do think, has made some strides over the last month or so. What do you think about these picks, Bernie? I think you get a predominantly big-time hitter in Dane Pastrana, a predominantly big-time arm in Carter Abernathy. I think both these guys could be bottom half of A League or top half of B League. What do you think about the kind of depth picks here for the Pinstripes?
Yeah, because this is technically what kind of A draft would kind of start to end here. I think if Abernathy was the best player or worst pitcher on your staff, you're feeling pretty good. If Dane's the worst hitter on your hitting staff, you're feeling pretty good as well. So, good spot for both of them.
Moving into the 14th round here, the 27th overall pick for the throwbacks. It is going to be Lucas Perry coming off the board. This is a guy who I think, Bernie, last year we were saying is predominantly here for his pitching, but I think this guy he hit pretty good in the BWL last season. So Lucas Perry coming off the board here. So now the Pinstripes are on the board here, now that we're on the 28th overall pick.
What, are you on the board now?
The Pinstripes are on the board now because we're into the 28th overall pick. So the trade, all the picks for the trade have been have gone through. So now we're in the 28th overall pick. It is the Pinstripes. The Pinstripes, with the 28th overall pick, are going to take Aiden Page. So again, Bernie, I think KJ, two of the guys I said were kind of sleeper pitchers on the BBN show a couple weeks ago. Aiden Page and Carter Abernathy. KJ gets both. I think Aiden Page specifically is a guy who's going to play really well for KJ. I think this guy could be a really, really nice pick for him. Now the Pinstripes on the board again here for the first pick of the 15th round. The 29th overall pick. It's going to be Nolan Chilton. Nolan, a guy who I think can do a little bit of both, and Aiden Page I think can do a little bit of both as well. I kind of see him more as a pitcher, Bernie, but I mean, he did hit a couple home runs this fall. I think Aiden Page is a very underrated player. Aiden Page, Nolan Chilton, Bernie, I think 2 super high ceiling picks. What do you think about these 2 players?
Yeah, I think we'll kind of wait and see with Aiden Page here. I'm not so sure he's exactly a floor or a safe floor guy, but if I'm looking at this list again, I'm looking above the names that we've taken above Nolan Chilton. Again, I feel a little bit before I say I'm certain there's a player that's decisively better than him. I think he fell a little bit. I think this guy's a really good player.
Yeah, Nolan obviously no defensive value, but does pitch and does hit. So I think, I think a really nice value there for Nolan Chilton. I could have very easily seen him going in the 9th or 10th round. And KJ, I think a great value here in the 15th. It's going to move to the throwbacks here for the next 2 picks. The second pick of the 15th round is going to be Matthew Bender. So another very high ceiling hitter. Barney, we've seen this guy, one of the highest exit velocities at the age. Defensively, I think a little bit questionable. Doesn't really pitch, so you're really just betting on the bat. But Bernie, when this guy's on, there's nobody who is a higher ceiling type hitter than Matt Bender. And again, I think at this point in the draft, what do you think, Bernie? If you're drafting here late in the draft, do you like kind of the all-around players, or would you rather have a guy who's great at one thing and kind of struggles at everything else? What do you like to do late in drafts here?
Yeah, as we get to this point, I think I'm looking at players who specialize in one thing or are really good at one thing. I think the all-around players here, the really top ones have already all been taken. So we're looking at a guy who can maybe help out your team a couple weeks out of the year, or can really help your team in one aspect really well.
So Matthew Bender goes with the 30th pick, and it's going to be TJ Patrick with the 31st pick. Again, I think a very high ceiling bat. I think has some potential on the mound as well. What do you think about these 2 picks, Bernie? Matthew Bender and TJ Patrick. I know both guys that Rob really likes a lot. I think arguably he could have gotten them even a little bit later, just because I don't think KJ was going to take him with his next 2 picks. But I think certainly 2 guys Rob wanted on his team.
Yeah, Bender's one of those guys, man. If he, like you said, like we've talked about before, if this guy is up there locked in, ready to hit, he could easily, be one of the best shows in the 18 for a couple weeks out of the year. He's that good. And TJ, kind of see here, TJ had a pretty good season for 18U. Can kind of do a little bit of it all, but we'll see, how much above average he is at everything necessarily.
Yeah, TJ in the BWL last season hit .333, didn't play the full season, got picked up mid-year, and played well when he did get in there and got a chance. The pinstripes on here for back-to-back picks. Their first pick here of the 16th round, the 32nd overall pick, is going to be Kobe Kennedy, another high ceiling hitter. Kobe, again, I think the BWL doesn't quite play to his strengths, being a pull, fly ball, left-handed bat. But Bernie, I want to get your thoughts on Kobe Kennedy and also the next pick for the pinstripes, which is the first pick of the 17th round, Anthony Young. So 2 big bats here, Bernie. What do you think about Kobe Kennedy and Anthony Young?
Yeah, I think Kobe's proven that he's, either a top team hitter or very close to it. I don't really think he's necessarily a high ceiling. I think his floor is also pretty high. This guy's just a good hitter, I think. A. Young, we'll see here. Had a pretty good season at 18 burn. Ended the year as a 4-hitter. I don't see any reason why, against some younger guys here, he cannot put together some good at-bats.
Yeah, I think definitely you get, 2 guys who will be either the middle of the order for the B-League team or guys off the bench for the A-League team. I think 2 really nice picks there. The throwbacks on the board here for the 34th and 35th overall picks, and it just shows you how deep this draft is, that players this good are still getting picked, 33 picks in. There's still some very good players who haven't been drafted yet. And one of those players here, a guy who can very good defensively, very good off the mound, Max Sandler goes off the board. This is a guy who, Bernie, I like a lot as a player. Again, he was my shortstop basically the entire B-League season last year, and he was one of my big-time pitchers. I think pitching and defense, I think this guy is very, very good, and we'll see who Rob pairs him with here with the other throwback picks. But I like this pick a lot. I think it was good value here for Max Sandler. I think he could be one of the best B-League pitchers, and I think he's the B-League shortstop. And even if you brought him to the A-League, I think he could offer some value defensively there as well. Let's see who Rob opts to pair him with. So pairing with Max Sandler here with the 34th and 35th overall pick, he's going to go ahead and do the natural thing and take Colin Sandler. So, Bernie, what do you think about this? Max, I think more of the high floor safe player. Colin, more of the high ceiling. We know what Colin did last year in the BWL. He was an absolute monster with the bat. Obviously, Colin, high ceiling at the plate, high ceiling off the mound. Max, high floor off the mound, very good defender. What do you think about these 2 picks here? I think it's a nice kind of contrast.
Yeah, I know it's a little funny because they're twins and all, but these guys do complement each other well. Max is definitely the defender pitcher, and Colin's the better hitter at this point here. So, yeah, they complement each other well for these 2 picks.
And I think Colin's going to have a very sneakily good pitching season, Bernie, for the BWL. I think he's been putting the work in. I think he could be a very nice pitcher. I don't think Rob's drafted him as a pitcher. I think Rob's drafted him as a big-time hitter, but I think he's going to be surprised with what he gets as a pitcher. I'll tell you what, Bernie. There are some guys in the Bears majors that put up good stats. I mean, every level they play, doesn't matter what team they're on, they just put up good stats. And this is one of those guys, Bernie. Atticus Slocum coming off the board. I mean, it just seems like whether it's his high school team, whether it's Latrania, whether it's Driscoll, this guy just hits 500 wherever he's at, man. I got to be honest, I haven't seen Atticus play much in person, but when you just look at this guy's stats, I mean, all he does is produce, man. I don't know what it is about Atticus Slocum. I think he can pitch if you need him to. He plays a very solid first base as well. I think in terms of a B-League solid player, I think Atticus Slocum is a really nice pick here. And Bernie, I want to get your thoughts with Atticus and also Henry Wiersmuller, who is, Bernie, if nothing else, is straight vibes. I mean, this guy is the life of the party. I think this guy just a great vibes pick. I got to be honest, I haven't seen him play much in games. I mean, I look at his stats. His stats are solid. He works exceptionally hard at practice. He can pitch. He can hit. But what this guy does do is bring great energy. I know he was a guy KJ really wanted. What do you think about Atticus and Henry Wiersmuller here?
Yeah, Atticus had that big injury in the summer, but if that injury wasn't there, he'd be in contention, a couple runs higher, I think. He's had a great, he had some great stats after he came back after being off that long. And with Henry, I know he caught a decent amount for Driscoll toward the end of the year, so he got moved up. So I think that says a lot about, how he was catching for Driscoll with that deep of an age.
So the throwbacks are going to be on the board here with the 38th overall pick, the second pick of the 19th round. And it's going to be Mac Weber who comes off the board. Mac Weber, a guy who has a very high ceiling, a guy, just an outstanding kid, and a guy who's working really, really hard. He's a guy who I think maybe week 1, you're going to say, 38th might have been a little too high, but week 6, week 7, I think we might be thinking this is a really good value. I could see this guy really taking off this winter. Just the strides he's made over the past 6 months, have been really enormous, and I think you could very easily see him taking off over the winter as he dedicates to weight training and getting stronger. So I think this is kind of a wait and see pick. I don't think 38 is a good spot for Mac Weber today, but I think it could look like an amazing spot in 6 or 7 weeks when Mac Weber really kind of grows into his own as a player. I think this winter is going to be huge for him. The 39th overall pick is going to be Hugh Holloway. So you get kind of that guy who's a high ceiling, I think wait and see kind of guy in Mac Weber. And then you get a guy who, Bernie, you know what you're going to get from him right now in Hugh Holloway, a guy who's going to play solid defense. He's going to go up there and be a solid pitcher, and he's going to be a solid hitter, put the ball in play. So, Bernie, you get the kind of perspective pick of Mac Weber, and you get the know what you're going to get picking Hugh Holloway. What do you think about this combination?
Yeah, again, I think Rob's doing a good job the past couple rounds of getting guys to comment the chart here a little bit. But yeah, we know Hugh right now is a good player. He was one of the best players on trained all season long, best pitcher, one of the best defenders, one of the best hitters. And like you said, Mac, with how far he's came in the past 12 months or so, I don't see a reason why he can't be a big contributor to the B team lineup in a couple weeks here.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in Mac Weber. I think he's going to develop a lot over this winter. And Hugh Holloway, there's not a safer pick than Hugh Holloway. You know he's going to bat 400. You know he's going to put up a solid pitching line. And now we're moving on to the Pinstripes' 40th overall pick. It's going to be Caden McBride, a guy who's an interesting pick, Bernie, a left-handed thrower who plays outfield, so doesn't really offer anything defensively. He's going to be a strike thrower. He's going to be a solid bat. I know this guy played well in the BWL last season for KJ, so maybe going for a little bit of a reunion there. And then the next pick is going to be Colin Zufall. So Colin Zufall, he's a guy who I think has really shown some flashes of greatness here this fall. This guy, potential big-time power. I think he could be the shortstop for this B-League Pinstripes team. And then Cade McBride, a guy who I think is more safe. I think he's going to, he's going to put the ball in play and he's going to throw strikes. What do you think about this kind of combination here of Cade McBride and Colin Zufall?
Yeah, I think McBride's, he's always batted toward the top of the orders on some of the lower teams here. I think it's pretty good bat. And I did see him pitch a little bit this year. He can throw some strikes. And with Zufall, I really don't know much about him. I've seen him practice a little bit. Guy can field a little bit, so we'll see what he can bring.
I'll tell you what, I've only seen Colin Zufall play in a game once, and he hit an absolute shot, Bernie. It was on Afton, the big field at Afton, and he two-hopped the wall. It was an absolute shot. I look at his stats, and obviously he's not doing that every single weekend, but I think the potential is there, and he's one of those guys you could see really taking a big step forward over the winter. Okay, moving on for the throwbacks, their 42nd pick is going to be another guy who, I mean, Bernie, you're going to have to go a long way to find a guy who can hit the ball farther than this guy. It's going to be Evan Little who comes off the board. I mean, we'd have to go up maybe 20 picks to find a guy who can hit a ball further than Evan Little. The potential certainly is there. I mean, BWL, he played well last year in this league. I think, is he going to stay healthy the whole time? Is he going to be available the whole time? I think defensively he's very underrated. I think a nice pick, and he's going to go ahead and pair that with Mason Geddes. So another guy here. So another 15U guy coming off the board. Mason Geddes definitely solves the defensive problem. Mason can't pitch for this age, so that is kind of why he falls a little bit here. But hitting and defense, I think is going to be a really solid pick for this B-League team, presumably. Bernie, what do you think about this? Kind of got the big, scary Evan Little with the super safe, super solid Mason Geddes.
Yeah, Mason's going to give some good at-bats even at the 16-18 league. He's going to play a great shortstop if he's still the shortstop of that scheme as well. And Evan Little, this guy could end up being one of the best hitters in the B-League, if not even an A-League type hitter. We've seen him do it before. I know he had some struggles over the parts of summer and fall, but he still has that potential in there to be one of the best bats.
And with the BWL rule set, Bernie, where you don't have to have the same guys in the field as you have in the lineup, there's so much versatility, there's so much flexibility for the coaches. You can have this approach where you take the big-time hitters early and stack your lineup with big-time hitters, and then have these defenders who just play defense for you, for the majority of the game. So I really like how this throwbacks team has come around, Bernie. I know you were a little bit skeptical on it for the first, 10 rounds or so, but I agree, Bernie. I think this team has really kind of come to form here. The 44th overall pick here, it's going to be another 15U guy off the board. Aaron Knoll comes off the board. Big-time bat, Bernie. Potentially, I think, the one thing he's not going to be scared of playing with these older guys. I mean, this guy's absolutely fearless. This guy believes he is the best player no matter what age, what team he's playing on. So you get Aaron Knoll, Bernie, and you pair him with the 45th overall pick in Cale Carpenter, a guy who, just, entered the Bears here a couple months ago, a guy who I think has a lot of potential. I haven't really seen the full potential of this guy. So you got Aaron Knoll, who is a super high ceiling. You got Cale Carpenter, a guy who's a little bit unknown. I think a very solid defender in Cale Carpenter. I think a guy who is looking to make his mark. I like this pick a lot, Bernie. I don't know what you think about the Aaron Knoll, Cale Carpenter duo here.
Yeah, I don't know much about Cale, if I'm being honest here. But Aaron, if I'm lining up all 15 guys, I'm saying, okay, which one of these guys can make the biggest impact on the A-League team? I would probably pick Aaron Knoll as the straight biggest impact at the bat.
Yeah, Cale Carpenter, Bernie, I haven't seen him playing games much, but seeing him in the cage, seeing him at practice, the ball, he really does outperform his size. I mean, the ball absolutely pops off this guy's bat. He's a very solid defender as well. This Pinstripes team, I mean, they're going to be good defensively in both leagues, and I'm excited to see how that ends up working out for him. The throwbacks are going to go to 15U well again, and they're going to take Joey Burgess with the 46th overall pick. The throwbacks getting another big bat here, another catcher as well. I think can't really argue with that pick. Another big bat. I think there's no hitter left in this draft that's clearly better than Joey Burgess, so I think you get a nice solid player there. And Bernie, I thought this might be coming here toward the end of the draft. It's going to be Harrison Blebaum, who gets drafted here in the 16-18 league. So Harrison Blebaum is going to be playing in 3 different leagues here to start the season. Bernie, I asked you how you thought Harrison was going to perform in the 14-15U league. You said you were pretty confident. What about 16-18U? How do you feel about Harrison going up against these 16U pitchers? He's probably going to be at least starting in the B league. So against pitchers, like a Henry Wiersmuller, like a Cade McBride, guys like that. I think he's got a good chance, Bernie. What do you think about Harrison Blebaum in this B League?
Yeah, he's definitely good. I think going to play in the B League. He's still one of the best hitters in the Bears. 16-18 in the B League. We'll see if he ever gets called up to the A League because facing guys like Logan Ecker and those type of guys. I think might be a little bit out of Harrison's league right now, but who knows.
All right, Bernie, I've been waiting for this guy to get picked for about 10 picks here. I like this guy a lot. I had him on my BWL team last year. He played really, really good for me, and I think he's going to play really good again this season. I think this is tremendous value. It's going to be Andrew Kahlberg coming off the board here. I thought this guy played phenomenal for me last year. I think, he's only going to excel in the pinstripe system where, KJ is always making his guys feel like they're better than they are. I think Kahlberg just kind of needs that belief in him, man. His belief that he's a great player. I think KJ is going to provide that on the Pinstripes roster. So I absolutely love the pick. I think it's great value. Bernie, I want to get your thoughts here on Andrew Kahlberg along with the 49th overall pick, which is on the way. Bernie, what do you think about Andrew Kahlberg and Dayton Eakins, who goes here? Dayton Eakins, a guy who, again, I like a lot. I think adds a lot of value defensively, and I think he's sneakily pretty good with the bat as well. What do you think about these 2 picks here? Rob went young with a 15 and a 14 or a 15 and a 13U guy. KJ goes old. He goes with 217U guys. What do you think about the picks here?
Yeah, I got to come out and watch some 18U Burn games here. On an 18U Burn team that struggled defensively a lot, Kahlberg was a phenomenal catcher. I know I talked to JT a lot before that. JT was always like, yeah, Kahlberg's pretty good back there. Kahlberg is very good back there behind the plate. Picking, throwing, blocking. He's a safe bat, as well as I think Dave Eakin's a good shortstop, and it's a pretty safe bat as well.
Yeah, I think that both very good picks here for the value. So we're into the final 3 picks here. The 50th overall pick. Rob's going to go with Ethan Portell, a guy who's got a very high ceiling. When this guy's at his best running, we've seen what numbers he can put up when he's really on. A little bit inconsistent at times, but I think the ceiling very, very high for this guy. What do you think about the Ethan Portell pick here?
Yeah, a guy I think maybe fell a little bit here. This guy's always been, kind of a middle Driscoll player, I think, when it comes to lineup, kind of where he's played here. But clearly Rob knows him better than anybody else. I know Jeff likes him, so I think this guy's going to be a pretty good player for this team.
Okay, we've moved into the 26th round, the 51st and 52nd overall pick. Each team has 1 pick left here. If you do not get drafted, you can be picked up. Last season, 104 players were drafted in the BWL, but more than 150 players played in the BWL. So you can get picked up. A lot of players do get picked up, so be sure to go ahead and stay in. It is going to be the throwbacks pick here, the 51st overall pick. Final 2 picks, Bernie, it's crazy that we're 50 picks in, man. You still have quality picks like Andrew Kahlberg, like Ethan Portell, like Dayton Eakins coming in here. Just shows you the depth of this age. We'll see here. Bernie, I still got 6 guys who I think deserve to be drafted here. So at least 4 guys, in my opinion, are going to go undrafted that I didn't expect to go undrafted. And we'll see what Rob ends up doing with his last pick, what KJ ends up doing with his last pick. I think this is, obviously you're going to make pickups. After week 1, you might make a pickup. So who do you want on your roster from day 1, I think is what you're deciding here. Who do you not want to let KJ pick up? And Bernie, who do you not want to let KJ pick up? Rudy Montenegro Langley. So he gets Harrison, he gets Rudy, and I'll tell you what, man, Rob, he kind of made it clear he wanted to go with the older players, but he really hasn't done that. He's taken a lot of the younger guys, especially the 13U guys. So you get Harrison, you get Rudy, and I'll tell you what, Bernie, I think this team has a really high potential, this throwbacks roster. What do you think about Rudy hanging with these 16 18U guys?
Yeah, with the bat again in the B League, I think he will play just fine. Defensively, he's still, in my opinion, might be one of the best catchers in the B League. As far as truly defensively goes as a catcher.
And with the final pick, the 52nd overall pick here in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, it is going to be the first 14U player off the board, Bernie. Landon Portell comes off the board here. Landon Portell, comes off the board. I think, again, I think he's going to have no problem playing with these older guys. He's big and strong. He's a guy who I think plays with a lot of confidence. I think this is going to end up being a really nice player for KJ to have on his B-League team. So I'll tell you what, Bernie, what a draft night here. What are your overall takeaways from this draft here? What are your thoughts? I think you kind of made it clear that you were a little bit questionable about the throwbacks early on, but you liked how they kind of finished in the middle to late rounds. What are your overall thoughts about these 52 picks here?
Yeah, if I'm looking at them, I think that the Pinstripes are going to have the better A-League team. I think the throwbacks are the better B-League team. I like the throwbacks middle to late rounds. And I thought the Pinstripes did really good early on and gained some, good guys in the middle rounds to supplement the A team.
Yeah, and I think this draft is going to 100% depend on how well KJ gets his bottom half the rotation guys to pitch and bottom half the lineup guys to hit. I actually think the throwbacks have the safer A-League team, but I do think the Pinstripes have the higher ceiling A-League team. So it just depends on the depth pieces of the Pinstripes, in my opinion, that make the difference. But that's going to do it for the BWL Draft. This has been a great experience for me. So many different players getting taken off the board here. And again, if you did not get drafted, you can get picked up. So, the first thing coaches look for, I promise you, if either coach asks me about a player, about if they should pick them up, the first thing I'm going to ask about is have they been missing. So if you want to get picked up, certainly be at everything. Be at every workout, every practice. If you miss a workout or practice, you're ineligible to play, and it really hurts your stock to get picked up as well. So be sure to be at everything. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Bears Baseball Network. We'll talk to y'all next time.